Good evening and welcome to a PTSA SEPTA Superintendent's Forum on this beautiful, feels like almost a June night in almost May. We're pleased to be able to speak with you here in person, and I think a number of you are with us virtually, and also we are taping this because even though it's not a lot of people in the room tonight because it's such a gorgeous night outside, that we understand that people want to still care about the issue and also enjoy the weather. But this is being taped, so let us move on. Alex Dalpiez, Board President, had to miss tonight, but he's given us some remarks to share. And as families, students, and staff and members of the village will know, a number of us are going to be very, very active out and about over the next several weeks for the budget and almost 6 to 8 weeks for the bond. And we're working closely with a number of people to set up some gatherings. Tonight we're going to give a presentation, a review, but with some new fresh words, if you will, on the budget. Make very clear what the board adopted as a budget and the village will be voting on May 20th. Melissa Szymanski, after Maureen Carbello, our business official, does a reminder about the key numbers in that, the financials. Melissa Szymanski, Dr. Szymanski will walk us through for each of the buildings and special ed and athletics, highlights of what this budget will provide us. We'll try and do that efficiently so we can then swing to the bond and talk about the bond. So we have been working very, very hard to streamline and focus our materials, our communications, now that the board has adopted the three-part structure for that bond referendum. When we get there, Maureen Carbello will explain that structure, and then we'll get into some detail on the bond with some testimonials, photos, and all the rest. So at this point, Maureen, why don't you pick it up to kind of remind us of what the budget will provide us.
Thank you, Bill. I just need the remote there to advance the slides. Thank you. So this evening, we're only really going to go over 2 slides, and then Melissa will then walk us through in terms of what the impact is at each building. So just as a reminder, we are presenting a budget, which with a budget-to-budget change of 4.73%, which is again within the allowable tax growth limit of 3.66 for Hastings. It does, in fact, then become a negative tax rate, but that's primarily driven by the increased assessed valuation of individual homeowners, but that does not mean that people will see a tax decrease because of this budget. Likely, the tax increase most residents will receive is in that 3.66 number. We did a lot of work to get to that, as many of you who have been following our budget process know. We went through different reiterations of the budget through this process. I think it was I think where we landed was a strong spot. There was a lot of work to get there, and we really do appreciate all the feedback we received from the public, from our faculty and staff, and I think it really represents And as far as the breakdown of the numbers, all of our budget documentation can be found online under our budget tab. And in that, you'll see greater breakdown of all these numbers. But just again, as a reminder for those, in terms of the way the budget is presented in larger categories, there's really 4 main components of the budget, and general support, which includes everything in terms of the runnings of the buildings, the energy, central administrative costs, and things such as that, and general liability insurance. But what I do want to point out is that you can see where primarily the increase to the budget is in two categories. I mean, although the transportation increases a lot, as far as a dollar amount, it's not a significant increase to the budget. But as you can see, our instructional portion of our budget is growing by $1.5 million year over year, and as well as the undistributed portion of the budget. And as a reminder for those who may not have followed along, undistributed really is primarily the employees' benefits package within the budget. And again, that relates really back to instruction, because most of that category represents the pension and health insurance benefits for our staff. So again, that is a $2.8 million year over year change. And again, we've spoken about in detail. We are growing our staff as well as just having some higher expenses in terms of health. And as far as state aid, right now we are showing an increase of about $500,000, as well as using a significant amount of reserves to balance this budget. And we've talked about this before, so I don't want to belabor the point tonight, but we did speak about the importance of really being mindful of that, because in terms of the way we were able to close this budget this year, quite frankly, was by using almost $2 million of reserves to close that budget gap. And again, these are non-recurring revenues. Just really have to be mindful of that as we develop our budgets in future years. But again, we are very happy with the outcome of this budget, and we feel it's a strong budget for Hastings. Thank you.
So now Melissa Szymanski will bring to life how this is a strong budget.
Yes.
And I want to just echo Maureen's appreciation for the board's work on this. Their due diligence is they rightly so pushed and probed, asked lots of questions as staff, families, students, and residents were asking questions, and we arrived at a good place. So now Melissa will explain that in more detail.
So I'll begin by talking a little bit about what the proposed budget will do, specifically at Hillside Elementary School, where we are seeing opportunities for the continuation of creativity and growth throughout the entire instructional program that's being offered. So first is the learning environment, ensuring that we continue an environment that is nurturing and inclusive and student-centered. New facilities support flexible, engaging learning spaces, and we see that, and that is across the board. Creative expression, so a strong focus on the art. For example, the 4th grade musical, Night of the Arts, so all of that will be a continuation. Opportunities for students to showcase their talent and their individuality. And then from an academic and social emotional support lens, personalized learning through the continuation of a multi-tiered system of supports, our MTSS process. It will include counseling services, monthly wellness lessons, and then a continued focus on 21st century skills. So that would include our STEAM program, the new ILC that was established this year, the Innovation Learning Commons, where students are busy coding, working with robotics, collaborating, and then also many hands-on experiences that build critical thinking. And in terms of community growth, spaces like the multi-purpose room and new student services wing enhance connection, and every child will continue to be empowered to explore, grow, and succeed. And so the proposed budget will continue to allow for that. At Farragut Middle School, Farragut is entering a phase of growth and improvement as a result of the proposed budget, and this would be guided by the January 2024 action plan that was presented at the Board of Education meeting if you want further detail. But really the new budget focuses on 4 key areas: class size and schedule adjustments, new staff, enhanced support programs, and also a number of new offerings. So in terms of class size and scheduling adjustments, 6 sections per grade, smaller class sizes, smoother student progressions. A revised schedule that would minimize missed classes for support services and increase teacher collaboration. And that's as a result of additional staff, which allows a bit more flexibility in the master scheduling process. In terms of new staff, it would be 9 new teachers to support programs and student needs, and 5 of those would be new positions: 5th grade, ELA MTSS offering, executive functioning, science, and then a shared TA for the testing center. And again, those other positions are fully replacing the retirees. In terms of enhanced support programs, fully staffed MTSS in ELA and mathematics, and a new opportunity for mathematic enrichment in grades 6 and 7, expanded earth science labs, a new 5th grade STEAM program, a new financial literacy class for all 8th graders, and then a number of new offerings. So Heritage Spanish for grades 7 and 8, Exploring Equity course would be continued, executive functioning classes in grades 6 and 7, strengthened special education co-teaching model, and expanded special area courses, so art, technology, family and consumer sciences, music, PE, health, and library. So Farragut Middle School would be very poised to continue a trajectory of growth and excellence, really making the program a lot more robust through additions to staffing and offerings. At Hastings High School, we want to continue supporting excellence. There is a balance of quality and budget, so there was careful planning that would ensure high-quality education despite tight budgets. The student experience will be fully maintained with the full range of AP courses and electives that are preserved. For example, AP Psychology, Trial Law, Creative Writing, Digital Photography, AP European Studies, and the average class size would remain under 20 students when you look across the program. Staffing, retirements are addressed through internal redistribution and full-time hires. Program expansion, science research would be extended to a third year, growing to include the opportunity for 10th graders, and offer authentic multi-year research experiences with college credit opportunities through SUNY Albany, and that again would be connected to the science research becoming a 3-year program. And then continued commitment to excellence, focused on individualized attention, innovative programs, and academic excellence. In the area of special education, the focus is on strategic leadership and program enhancement. So the leadership commitment, a new leadership structure to promote coherence and excellence. So rather than a director of special ed, a new interim assistant superintendent for pupil personnel services, Jean Ferrugio, will be joining us. And again, that new position will allow for special education, ENL, and MTSS oversight. And then both assistant directors for special education would be maintained for strong continuity. In terms of program enhancements, 2 ICT sections per grade would be maintained in grades K through 5. And then there would be an expansion of ICT sections in English from 2 to 3 at lower levels. Added lab support for earth science in the middle school, as I mentioned before, but that is specifically to ensure that we're creating those pathways for our students with IEPs in terms of Regents credit and the opportunity to receive that earlier for those who may want to take advantage of that opportunity earlier. Adding consultant teacher at the high school to support math and 10th through 12th grade needs, establishing a dedicated testing center for student accommodations, and expanding in-district programming to better serve students locally. Also in the area of special education, focusing on efficient use of resources, efficiently targeting our resources to meet student needs. The budget challenges that we've had are not driven by special education, and thinking about the leadership restructuring that I just mentioned in terms of an assistant superintendent for PPS, pupil personnel services, that's achieved with over $60,000 in budget savings. So even though that is a different position from the director position, it is a savings for the district. And then our ongoing commitment to inclusive student-centered practices, strong collaboration with families and professionals, and a focus on long-term growth and on excellence. In the area of athletics and extracurricular opportunities, we have 435 students fall of 2024, 273 students winter 2024, 275 plus students registered spring 2025. So our athletics program continues to be robust and integral to everything we're doing here in Hastings. So the proposed budget would allow for the continuation of 55 athletic teams plus the Hudsonettes, a full-time athletic trainer. The Hastings ski team would now be a regular team. Athletics-based clubs like the weight room and ultimate frisbee. Student leadership via student athletic committee, and targeted equipment and facility upgrades. In terms of extracurricular program support, continued support for a wide variety of extracurriculars across all 3 school buildings. Theater program budgets had increased already by over 50% over the last 2 budget cycles, so we want to maintain where it's currently at, and the proposed budget would allow for that. And then enhanced support to ensure optimal student experiences in theater participation. We are very proud of our program offerings in Hastings, and we want to make sure that the proposed budget maintains or builds upon those offerings and would be able to do so in the ways that I highlighted.
Thank you, Melissa. Let me remind our viewers and those in the room that this presentation will be sent out tomorrow to everybody, and we hope people spend a little time with it because we are working hard. You know, we are a very intelligent community in Hastings, so I believe Hastings can address and support and understand detail. At the same time, from a communications standpoint, we're trying to bring some real focus. So, for example, we now have an icon as it relates to the budget, which you've seen. We have a special icon as it relates to the capital bond. Those are 2 very significant votes. There's some confusion. The budget is our annual operating source of money. We do some facility work within that budget, but the long-term major lift for our facilities, such as this wonderful multi-purpose room we're sitting in now, if you're in Hillside and no Hillside, it's been redone in so many wonderful ways. That was capital money. That's what we're similarly asking the village to again, in which Maureen will explain in a moment, to again go on June 17th and vote. You'll vote your conscience, but we would recommend you think seriously about why we need that help now. Again, it's multi-year. It's a different set of funds than the operating budget. If we can't get things done with the capital budget, we have to go into the operating budget, which we don't want to do for all those great reasons and programs that Melissa explained. So Maureen now will give us sort of the introduction, and then I'll come back with a little more explanation.
Thank you, Bill. So again, as Bill had said, it is a separate operating pod, and I'm not going to necessarily read this quote, but it's
a beautiful quote,
okay,
Maureen.
well, say it is me. I don't even remember what day I said this. So basically, we do see our schools as the heart of this community, and it's a place where our students learn, grow, and prepare for their futures. To ensure that we always have the best possible environment, we're proposing a capital bond that addresses 3 critical areas: essential building upgrades, athletic field improvements, and an instructional space expansion at the Farragut complex. So, you know, where we started, and we started this process about 2 years ago when we started to prepare and plan for a new capital project. That is a constant part of our work each year. We're looking at our facilities, our 5-year plan, working with district architects and engineers to evaluate our current building conditions and report back to the board and make recommendations about things and when they need to be addressed to help us plan and prepare financially for undertaking this work. So as part of this process, we did start out with a larger amount of work that we were contemplating, which was north of about $60 million or so. And with the careful work with our board and our architects and engineers and our admin and different people in the community, we've been able to really get down a 3-part proposal that addresses 3 critical areas of need as they currently exist in Hastings schools. So the first proposition, and this will allow voters to vote on each proposition, although there is a little bit of difference between each proposition. So first I'm just going to walk through the propositions, and then I'll speak to how that works in terms of if you were to vote on one and not the other, and the impact of those things. So the first part of our budget is for what we call district-wide infrastructure improvements. And that is really just addressing mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and masonry work at the building. Currently in our building condition survey, there's about $40 million of this work that's identified. We are currently recommending $11,254,000 to address this work. This amount does include both hard construction costs as well as contingency, escalation, as well as soft costs such as architects and engineers and other types of expenses that go along with doing this work. And that, again, we've walked through, we've detailed out, and as Bill had said, we do have lists of what that would include on our website, and that is addressing BCS district-wide improvement work at both buildings, Farragut as well as Hillside. The second bond proposition is in regards to the additional space enhancements at Farragut Complex. And that's a two-part proposition, but it falls under one. One is to create a handicap accessible entrance for the Farragut Complex, which it currently does not have. This, again, addresses the compliance issue about having a handicap accessible door for our building that allows for a secure entryway with security. And that is one part of it. And then the other larger part of the proposition is to create an addition at Hillside, which would be built within the current courtyard, which we would then move our current cafeteria from the upstairs third floor of the Washington wing to the courtyard space and allow us to renovate the existing cafeteria, which would gain about 7 instructional spaces with all the work that would be done with these additions. Again, we have a very detailed analysis that we undertook about a year ago where we had a space analysis done of the Farragut, and this is not bringing us to full what we believe we need, but this gets us to a very, very close to what is desperately needed at the Farragut Complex in terms of space. And then the third proposition is to do with our athletic fields at Burke Estate, and there are two major components of that work, one of which is to convert an existing grass field, which we refer to as the Upper Burke Fields, into a multi-purpose synthetic turf field. It would also include some additional parking, a modest amount of seating. That proposal did get scaled back significantly from what we first contemplated. It does not include field lighting, but it does provide a consistent playing space for our athletes at Burke 1. We're also recommending that a new softball field be built at Burke Estate, which would relocate. We would continue to have the softball field still located here for our modified and to have an additional field, but we would be building a new softball field, which would also be a synthetic turf option at the Burke Estate. And again, similar to the space analysis, we, working with our architects and engineers, had a master plan developed for all of our athletic facilities. And based upon the needs of the district, actually the softball field was identified as one of the most needed upgrades to fields as the current softball field because of the location has significant drainage issues, and because of where it is built, we cannot rectify that because of the rock that exists at this location. So again, that is the two primary parts of that proposition. It does also include some additional upgrades to the existing baseball field, which would fix the backstop behind the home plate and do some other upgrades as increase some drainage and things in the outfield, and it'll improve that. But again, primarily, the two largest components of that proposition are to establish 2 turf options at Burke Estate. Now, in terms of the vote itself, and the language is in fact in the propositions, if you do not vote yes to Prop 1, which is the building conditions work, even if you were to vote yes to the other 2 options, your vote in that case would not count. And in order to, you'd have to vote yes to options 1 and 2 for the field to pass. So again, it doesn't preclude somebody from voting on all 3, but your votes would only count for 2 and 3 if you voted yes to number 1, and then of course for number 3 it would be 1 and 2. So again, this really, we felt strongly we wanted to give the community an opportunity to vote on the things in which they want to support. There was a lot of consideration the board gave to this, and there were some concerns, that were brought to us from community members, and this is to address that concern. We will say we believe that does not mean the district doesn't think all 3 are equally important. It's just that we know that we wanted to give people an opportunity to vote on all three. And of course, number one being the most critical as far as need for the district. Now, you will take over? Thank you.
So a lot of hard work by the board, particularly Maureen Carballo, working with all our experts, the architects, the engineers, to get this three-part structure. With this clarity and the board's commitment to that, about a week ago, we now have the framework that we can communicate from and about and all the rest. We have to do all our work in public. So all the little bits and parts of even that 60, 70, $80 million set of ideas, those have been discussed in public, and rightly so. Members of the village have grabbed hold of certain pieces and parts and raised hard questions. We now have the clarity of what we are proposing for the vote. It's structured in these three ways, and now we're going to increasingly be sharing information to bring to life what's in those three parts. So the structure, the detailed, legally approved structure, is what Maureen has just explained. And again, let me say, we are listening to the residents of Hastings. The number we need is somewhere north of $90 million. We've brought this down just south of $40 million, listening very much and going right to the specific needs. The three-part structure is really a small d democratic move to allow the residents to really vote their conscience on these three parts. We need all three. You'll vote your conscience as residents, but we've given you a structure as to sort of hit what is most essential and vital. I would argue all three are, but we will respect the outcome. So what you see in front of you is the beginning of what we'll be sharing is the renderings. Within the next day or two, we'll have a color version of this. It actually is the way that technology works, and architects can show you what it actually would look like. But for those who've been following the process, this is a more modest version of the entranceway than was first shared. So there's some who would say, why the fancy glass entry to the high school? Well, that's not there anymore, because what we need is we do not have an ADA accessible building down there. Even a student who may have a sprained ankle and is on crutches can't get into the building well, can't get through the building. So by the new front entrance, it would handle both the middle school and the high school. It will be secure, but also provide an ADA compliant way into the building. It also, with some things we'll share in a little bit, opens up the flow in the building for where it gets incredibly crowded and all the rest, not just in classrooms or the cafeteria and hallways. We will free that up. But this rendering, which again is in this, which is posted, we will update it within the next day or two, gives you a visual of what that entranceway would look like. And as we have listened to good questions in the critics, this is Hastings and modest. So we feel that this solves a lot of the issues of what you'd want in the front. This is a rendering. There are many renderings of what the new cafeteria would look like. The purpose of the new cafeteria is on the right side of that image, is creating up to 7 instructional spaces. To the right are the 5 very up-to-code, efficient, high-quality classrooms, plus some more locker space we will create. That, to the right, is what the current cafeteria will turn into. If we don't unlock the middle of this building and go back to what was instructional space, we are giving up a lot of instructional space opportunity. As we're going to show more and more in documents, the current cafeteria is half as large as it should be. Half as large as it should be for the school population. So thus, it is reimbursable by the state. Cafeteria work is not always reimbursable because we're so insufficient. The state is going to say, if you build this, we will help up to 47% of the cost, help cover that. The new space you see there, again, it's a rendering. We're going to soon have color images of that, so it really helped bring it to life. There have been questions about why is it 2 stories. That image shows you that it's 2 stories only for that upward space to allow access on the upper part from other areas of the building. If it's not 2 stories, our flow issues are affected. We kind of are left crowded. But by that 2-story structure, but you can see from the inside, it's kind of like this space you're sitting in now, very high ceilings, and that upper floor, if you will, is a connecting function. It's necessary from functionality. There have been questions about why glass. Well, this is designed to actually be cost effective. The glazing expenses are going to be no more than it would be to put other structures up to build this. And one of the efficiency moves is, as you look at this, on the right side, that's the existing wall. On the back, that's the existing wall. So we'd be adding a significant new space with only, if you will, half new wall construction, which if we glaze that, again, it's no more expensive. It allows for natural light. It'll be other efficiencies because of its north facing. So there's a lot of care and thought going into this. So rightly so, people might think about the Eye and Pain Museum in Paris. That's not what we're building, if you all agree. It's to create a very efficient, effective space that if you don't have those two walls glazed, we have some light problems. We have some sensitive problems for the classrooms adjoining. And so we will continue to show more and more images and help people understand why this is so important. Here's a very tight narrative on hundreds and hundreds and thousands of words, trying on one page say again, this is about creating instructional space and about solving a cafeteria problem. Instructional space first, second, cafeteria problem. If we do nothing else, we have a cafeteria that's half the size it should be with a lot of aging equipment. And just find your average middle schooler and ask them about the lines and the flow in that cafeteria when they're trying to get to the good food. And it is good food. So you're going to understand why this is so important. Fields. A lot of good discussion and debate for many, many years in Hastings about fields. And the board has agreed in that third part of the referendum to propose a multi-purpose field. This is the Upper Burke, which would be converted into a synthetic field. And just below that would be the synthetic surface for the softball field. Off softball seasons, this would be used by multiple teams and athletes. This would have Burke have both natural turf and also have the artificial turf. Because of strict bidding processes and procurement processes for public school districts, we cannot pick our product ahead of time. We cannot pick a particular vendor ahead of time, meaning ahead of the referendum. If the referendum passes, we then can go into what will be a multi-month process. But we are right now, anyone's paying attention, as you know, in the last board meeting, we talked about looking to get ideas about what potential products could be. We will not come out with a particular vendor or a particular product, but we will come out with what are called specs. And we maybe go as far as to say, if the referendum passes, here is our spec list. So for example, on that spec list could be, we're looking for a product that does not include crumb rubber for fill. We may be looking for a product that has a recyclable aspect to that company's work. We'd be looking for a product that has other clear safety records and all the rest. We'd be looking for a product that has been used in public school settings so that we know that it has good life and potential. But those would be the specs that we would come back to. Alex, as I said, could not be here tonight. He asked me to speak to a question that's an excellent question. We'll get it up in our FAQs and we'll start pushing it out. But the question that he's heard is, why not just do better with your current natural turf fields? So we've got about a 3 or 4 paragraph answer. I won't give you the whole thing, but let me give you the headlines. We have been working very, very hard on our 7 natural turf fields for a long, long time. Maureen can speak to when we actually redid those surfaces, when we put in drainage systems to try and do the best we can. We have a small but excellent team doing everything we can with our natural turf fields, but what that means is you have to seed them, you have to aerate them, and you got to let them rest. And if we have any kind of rain, and even this fall with the extensive lack of rain, as those fields start getting worn down, we have to keep people off them. So that, as you may have heard often, is we've had last fall, not this fall, 50, 60 contests we could not have. We've already this spring lost, I think it's up to 12, 15 contests. Natural turf, we want that. We want a mix, so we'd still have 5 natural turf fields, 2 artificial, because that balance and blend, which really is the best practice in a lot of educational institutions now, meaning give your athletes the opportunity in natural turf, but also have that artificial turf. That's what we're moving towards. There's some good estimate that in a small college that has quality natural turf, they need to spend upwards of $500,000 a year to keep that natural turf field such that athletes are not getting hurt. So that's quite a significant investment annually. So these are all things that we are paying attention to. In the bond proposal, these are points that board members have put together to really emphasize sort of what are the basic facts and points here. I won't go through these in detail, but it just kind of reinforces kind of what is critical here, these 5 major areas. Again, we're just trying to find ways to, very simple language, bring to life what we are asking the community to support. Why are we prioritizing this work? This slide lays out, particularly for Farragut, it's quite urgent. We've got severe overcrowding. The classrooms, 19 of the 24 classrooms in Farragut are substandard. They're below New York State standards. So these are critical. Special ed, we've been asked to talk more and more about this. Will have a great benefit for our special ed students. Many of our special ed students often, particularly at the high school, for any kind of accommodation around some testing or things, they often have to leave the room and either go into the hallway to do some things. That's not Hastings. So we're looking for things that are basically that are required in a very basic, critical way. Note here the undersized cafeteria and the deteriorating infrastructure. We are without a middle school right now, fortunately because of the flood over the winter break. We've also had 2 other near misses on ceilings almost giving way. We pay very close attention to our building, but it's a grand old building and it needs some serious investment. And so these are the reasons why, as the board has said, it's so critical now that we do certainly those first 2 parts of the bond. This is how we know our situation. It's looking at all of these things: data, grades, parent concerns, behavioral issues, and all the rest. And then we talk about why we need to act now. These are talking points the board has settled on: state aid, growing enrollment, district growth, investment gap, aging facilities. I'm going to hit 2 points there. We know right now that for every dollar that a resident would put down, 47 cents is coming back. So for every dollar that a taxpayer puts down, 47 cents is coming back from the state towards the cost of this project. That's quite a good deal. And it's a much better deal than many of the communities around us have, and it's a deal we may not have for much longer. But we have it now. If the referendums pass on June 17th, we lock in on that reimbursement rate. Going down the investment gap, as wonderful as Hastings is, as significant as Hastings is, we have very strong data now that we've invested some $30 million less in our facilities than many of the communities around us. And that's catching up with us if you think about the issue of some of the situations we're struggling with right now. The last part of this presentation is going to be posted is we've begun to gather what we call testimonials. Alex Dalpiez, as you would hope, as board president, has put forward quite a good statement, and we're going to have this information out and about and shared in multiple ways. Our students have really stepped up, and Scott Wynn here, not a student, but principal of the middle school, fresh eyes, very dedicated to what we're doing in Hastings, and also saying our facility needs attention. And that's an image of a classroom. All those students have releases so we can have them in the photo, but you get a sense of it's crowded. It's not optimal. So these are things we're trying to address through the bond. Melissa Shandroff, our phenomenal science teacher, the head of the science research program, very strong sense now that those classrooms that will free up and create in the cafeteria will be for middle school science labs. So she's clearly behind trying to support what we're doing here. These are testimonials. I mentioned students. Bobby Gentleman, a rising junior, has been quite active rallying students around the athletics side of things. So that's a picture of the baseball field and a wonderful quote that's Bobby's own words. He wrote those, and that's his stance on why investing in the athletics matter. Joe Vaccaro, longtime science teacher, but also a coach, he stepped up. He came to my office and said, Bill, I really want the opportunity to speak and put my voice out there as to why this is so important. So he's speaking to an athletic side of it, but he also would be very strong on the facilities need. Siri Rosenberg, just recognized for her softball accomplishments, an incredible spokesperson for us. Again, another testimonial from Siri as to why these investments matter. And then we end with a little statement from me. I'm far more than a sports guy, though I care deeply about sports. What I like about this image is even though I talk about the grand old facility, it's that combination of we have grandness, we want to honor and respect what Farragut Complex is. We also have to have an ability to look ahead and be cutting edge, and in a sense that's what the field would speak to there. So there's a lot here. It's going to be posted on the website. We will then pull elements out, as many of you have been following. We're starting to take little pieces of this and put it out in a variety of ways. And we'll be out a lot talking to people to help people understand both the budget, the vote May 20th, and the bond vote June 17th. We have a small room tonight. There were 2 questions that did come in. We can speak to those if you'd like. PTSA SEPTA gathered those. I've got them here if you want, or do you want to read them off, or you got more, or you want to, how do you want to handle it? Okay. What? How do you want to handle it? We can just jump in. Yeah, one question, and I know that Melissa Szymanski ready to speak to this question, is how will the updates to school facilities meet the needs of the range of learners in Hastings? You have spoken already about breakout rooms, which are essential for many students with IEPs. We appreciate that affirmations. That's me. Can you please address flexible seating, such as wiggle seats, quote unquote, in places for sensory breaks? Will FMS rooms allow for more movement, motor breaks, students standing or walking around the classroom?
So the simple fact around having more space will allow for creating more opportunities for doing that. So having different spaces where students can go for a sensory break or to keep calm for emotional self-regulation, or to be able to move and sit. More space would certainly allow for more opportunities for those things. Also, when you're thinking about flexible seating options for students, when a room is designed and you're usually buying, a number of the same type of chair, and you introduce a different type of flexible seating, it often creates a slight disruption to where you can physically put it. But again, having more space would allow for more flexible seating options because you can reconfigure things differently. The other thing is just in general, while the bond itself would not cover those things, those would actually be in the budget in terms of a supply, being able to have something that students can sit and move on. We would need an articulated plan to make sure that we're working with one or more vendors in a way that makes sense, so that we are meeting the individualized needs of students, but also that we're not creating spaces that are so disparate from each other. We want to make sure that we have both alignment in how that flexible seating operates and even how it looks visually, and also we want to make sure that we have space so that we can leverage more of those flexible seating options.
Great, thanks. Another question that came in, we had 2 that came in. One was regarding then the capital bond. The second one, it reads, what are the ramifications if Proposition 3 of the bond does not pass? Would the alternatives proposed in the Conservation Commission's webinar on February 26th be considered? Alex Dalpiez was part of that and attended that. One answer I can give, and then Marie may want to add a bit, is we would have to go back to the drawing board. Getting a bond up and out and get it voted on, that in itself is a lot of effort. There's expenses related to that. And then the question I spoke to from Alex is really wanting us to be direct about what we're doing with grass fields. That was part of the discussion at the commission. I think some of the sense, which I understand, was we have fields and we're really not taking care of them. Well, we are. And we've been taking care of them very actively relative to what we can within our current operating budget limits. So if Prop 3 here, if you will, and I guess in some states that phrase has historic meaning, so I'm not going to say it again. Sorry, I've been around this world too long. But the third question in this budget for the fields, if that does not pass, we'll have to do some work. We will be largely status quo with the fields. We'll continue having the building and grounds teams working very carefully on them, but all the reasons we've been advocating for a mix of artificial and natural, that will be off the table, and we'll have to circle back. There is within Hastings, there's been talk about a particular product, turf talent and drain talent. It's a very compelling idea, a very compelling option. We've had these conversations with the individuals involved with those ideas, so we've been very forthright with them. The challenge we have there is it does not currently exist anywhere in the United States, particularly within a public school environment. And that creates some challenges as to whether it would work well for us. That's something we'd have to look at. You also then get into bidding issues as the state requires it. So what we are going to stay in conversation for other ways we're thinking about our fields. But the simple answer is if that third question goes down, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And we will keep, though, working hard with our existing fields to make them as playable as possible. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
My friends here to my left and right, they're so nice to me. They didn't notice that when I was going through the presentation, I was not advancing the slides. So I'm not going to redo it, don't worry. But what I'm going to say is when you get your hands on this, once you hit the softball field, go to those next slides, because members of the board have worked really hard to take hundreds of pages of material and reduce it down to the main points. So again, when this is shared, it's going out tomorrow to everybody. Find the softball field image, and then after those, dig in and go a little further, because it's very clear, direct information. So I don't know if we have other questions that have come in, Tanya or Heather, or where are we?
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, you might
Yeah,
have a question.
please.
Of course.
Please.
There's a microphone, I think, over there. Yeah.
This won't be too hard. Okay, so,
Is that mic
Is that
on?
mic on?
can you hear me now?
No, I don't. I mean,
I
we
can
can't
hear
hear you.
myself in
but-
the speakers.
Patrick, can you hear? Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Here we go. Okay, so the first question is, you said you'd have to go into the current budget if the bond fails. Can you please explain that?
So in terms of the first part of the referendum, there's many upgrades that it addresses, and it may, if it weren't to pass, there are things such as masonry repairs and other type of really critical infrastructure that without bond funding, we would then, within the operational budget, either have to identify funding or budget for in future years without that additional pot of money to pay for those repairs.
Would that amount still be the $11 million?
Well, what would likely have to happen is we would have to address the most critical items in there first. But even beyond those, I think just to kind of back up to an earlier thing we were discussing, beyond those Prop 1 repairs, there's a number of other things that are kind of, coming down the road also. So I think it really would require then for us to address some of those in the immediate operating budgets and then really have a plan, because even beyond those, we currently also know in 2 years we have a boiler replacement at this school that's $1.5 million. So it would require us to use at least $1 million or more to just address the most critical items. And then I believe we would have to try to come out with another bond at one point, because we would not be able to pay for $11 million out of our operating budget.
No, it's a very
It's a good question,
helpful
yeah,
question.
yes.
We wouldn't go, it wouldn't be a straight swap.
Right.
As Maureen said. I mean, we wouldn't immediately for the 25, 26 budget pull
Right.
11 million, but we would have to go in. And that also would mean, because as I think most people here know, and you know, that the bond's voted on, if it's passed, the actual work doesn't start for a bit.
Correct.
And the actual bills don't arrive in the households for several years yet. So we would have to spread that 11 million out over several years, but it would be real, particularly as you look at that first section, what I like to call the guts of our buildings,
Right.
particularly Farragut.
It would likely be in the 26, 27 budget. When we would develop that budget, we would have to plan for somewhere between $1 to $2 million worth of funding to address some of the most immediate repairs.
Okay, thanks. I have 3 more questions. I just
Sure.
wanted to preface that.
Yep.
So the next question is, do the numbers that you show include the reimbursements from New York State especially for the cafeteria?
It does not. So what we show is the total cost, and when we presented at earlier meetings what that actually, the impact to taxpayers, we take what now would be the $38 million project, and then we project that over a 20-year borrowing with interest. We then back out the portion in which we'll get back from the state, and then that net number is what we've, at earlier meetings, we had spoken about, it would roughly be about $600 per household for individuals whose home was worth about $1.1 million. So the 38 million is all in, then we get the aid back on that number, plus interest.
Okay, so that $600 amount, is that specific to that one item, or?
Yes, so yes. So if you take the $38 million, the way we come up with what we, as a, again, we don't know the exact amount of interest we'll end up paying on it, but we do use a calculation to determine what we believe the impact will be to each household. So 38 million is what the cost of the project. Then when the project is completed, we then submit final cost reports to the state, and that then triggers 18 months later them paying aid back to the district over 15 years based upon the cost of the project. And then when we receive that aid, we borrow the money. That aid comes back on the revenue side of the budget, but then, of course, it nets out the cost to us. So we do then pay back the actual cost of the bond, but we have this revenue coming in from the state that offsets that.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it's.
Like, they don't pay it directly, we have to
time.
pay for it, and
Yeah.
then they reimburse us, in other
Okay,
words.
So you're
Yeah.
still paying interest on it, that means too.
Yes.
And I think, Maureen, when you were saying, there's to clarify, these are really helpful questions,
No,
thank
they
you.
are, yes.
Is that the cost per household on a roughly $1 million valued home is about $600 across the year, and that does account for
The state aid.
So that gets back to my very simple math. If you all come up with $1 residence, you're getting 47 cents back on that. So that's in that calculation.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my next question, actually, was, have you calculated the impact each of the bond proposals will have on real estate taxes, specifically the percentage increase in taxes per household, given, say, a $1 million house?
Yes, so we did speak about it, and it is on our bond website, so I could pull it up. We did break it down, and I think in our newsletter, again, you'll see these things as part of the information that we'll be sending to each resident. Within that, we'll be able to take that amount and just show an approximate impact to each household based upon each proposition. Because again, when we spoken about it earlier, our board president at one of our presentations did in fact go in and try to apply each component of the work, assign a value to it per year. So we'll be doing that as part of the newsletter, of course. We'll be breaking down each prop impact.
Thank you for doing
Yep.
that. With this, it gets kind of trickier. I'll use the word nebulous, in that Greenberg will come up with a different tax amount, and that might not be reflective of this actual change. Like a lot of people are seeing like 5-10% increase in their taxes,
Right.
and so it's hard to tie that back into what the change was, or the delta
Yeah.
for the schools.
Yeah, so it's the same challenge we have each year with the budget, because what we can control is the dollars that we spend and what we believe if your assessed valuation were not to change, the impact to your individual home. But I think what is going on with the town of Greenberg is, as they reassess some people's property, even if the district were not to spend one more dollar, you could in fact pay additional taxes possibly based upon shifts in the tax assessment in the village. So what I can say is that impact is really based upon, if we were to look at today, that home value with the current assessed valuation that exists today. And that is still a real number, because even if your taxes were to go up 10%, the portion related to this bond would still be a constant. The other amount may be because either when people in the village, either if an individual, your neighbors, were to grieve their taxes, meaning challenge the assessed valuation of their home, when they get a reduction in taxes, it actually by default increases everybody else's. So that's constantly going on each year, and those are things which, even if we didn't increase the budget $1, an individual homeowner could see an increase in taxes just based on shifting of valuations. But as far as the impact of this borrowing, that is only going to impact taxes at a flat rate.
Okay, thank you for your answer. The next question is my last question. Is you had made statements in the slide deck about the budget proposal, and you also referred to documents that have those details. When you sent out this email you're referring to, are you going to refer to that document as well so people can understand those line items that you've described? And if not,
Oh, sure.
could you please do that?
Yes, of course. So currently and through most of our meetings, and actually our previous PTSA meeting, we did go through more a line-by-line budget. All of that information does exist on our website, but as part of our budget newsletter that goes to every resident, there will be more details for each of the breakdowns. But currently on our budget website, there is also a budget book that breaks down each component like into more detailed line items. And that also includes, within that you can see even the amount of staffing for each category and things of that to be a little bit more detailed.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate the questions.
you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're at a close. I want to very much thank Tanya and Heather, and not here, Amanda and Dean, the PTSA SEPTA leadership, the PTSA leadership here, SEPTA, are critical partners for us as administrators, and most importantly, our teachers and staff. But I meet, and Melissa and Maureen join me in that, and next year Jean will be part of that. We meet monthly, and I say in the early goings of those, bring us the truth, and they do it in a very accessible way. So I credit to them. There's almost nothing I hear that surprises me, thanks to all the good reconnaissance and insights I'm getting. So big thank you to the PTSA and SEPTA. And for those of you who are still hanging in online, look tomorrow at the latest the next day for this presentation. You can study it, you can look at it, it'll be sent to everybody. And also please look out about every other day now. We're going to have little short snippets coming out with facts and some images so you can understand it. And some of the questions tonight spoke to the necessary detail. You got to dig into the details, and that is on a dedicated bond page and a dedicated budget page. And the links will be again repeated for you in the materials coming out tomorrow. So thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to take over. My name is Heather Bensby, and I'm the co-president of the PTSA. I just want to say thank you to the administrators for answering all the questions that our community had. We're going to hold on. We called a meeting at 8 p.m. tonight. Mostly the vote will be taken over Zoom. We're asking our community to vote first for the budget and secondly for the bond. We're hoping that we can get a majority vote so that the PTSA can take a stance. What? Come here, I can't hear you, sorry.
PTSA.
Shoot, I'm getting corrected, sorry.
Not corrected, clarified. Just PTSA members.
Yes, PTSA, of course. Yes, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya, my co-president. This is a vote for only PTSA members. You must be a PTSA member in order to vote. So we're just going to kind of hold the Zoom call since we sent a flyer out to our community of the PTSA and SEPTA. We will be taking the vote promptly at 8 p.m. tonight. So I guess you can log off and log back on if you have to, or just stay logged on. I guess just please stay logged on. We'll take the vote at 8 p.m. Thank you.